something that I say along the way will touch you. I know it. Let's begin that process of crafting a meaningful life.
Here's Mary Crafts.
I'm so happy to have you back. This is Crafting a Meaningful Life. And let me tell you, at age 69, I've had a lot of years to be crafting my life. And I still have so far to go. I think I've told you like 1,000 times that I'm living to be 105 with an option to renew. So look at that. I have 35 years left to continue to live the best years of my life. They aren't behind me, I can tell you that. They are in front of me. And I'm always honored to be here and that you are here to join me to see what pieces that I might say and that my guests might say that will help you craft your most meaningful life. And isn't that what we're all here for? I am very excited today to introduce to you probably one of my favorite guests, maybe my top guest of all time. And I've done over I think 272 podcasts. So that's saying something. And so I want to introduce you to my dear friend, Sarah Foley. Welcome, Sarah.
Oh my gosh, I'm so honored to be here, Mary. And I feel like, when you talk to someone that has that much gratitude for life, like those are my favorite kind of people. The ones like you where you're like, I just know that I'm just getting started, that life's just going to keep getting better and better. So I'm honored to know you, honored to be here.
And the same. Because I truly believe that I think regret is the worst of the human emotions because it's about what's behind you. And fear, that I talk about a lot on this podcast, is of what's in front of you. But if you can focus in on your gratitude for today and that I'm alive and healthy and sitting in this chair talking to my most beautiful friend ever, what else is there, right? All right, okay, I want to tell people. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say that's such an interesting, insight of the regret versus the fear. And it reminded me, I had this beautiful therapist once, and she always said that, depression is living too much in the past and anxiety is living too much in the future. And when we can really sink into the present, that's when both of those seem to get quiet.
So I want to give people the preface to you and how we met.
Okay.
So like behind you, you have this sign that says beautifully vertical. Beautiful vertical?
It's becoming vertical, and I forgot to change
becoming
my camera
vertical.
away.
Yeah.
So it's becoming vertical, which is my entire way of going through life. It's this process of becoming.
So I met Sarah a while ago, and we were invited to a beautiful breakfast hosted by our dear friend, Tiffany Peterson. I had never met Sarah before. I said, I don't know this woman. Anyway, we were all seated at these tables, and Sarah and I were kind of like, I was here and she was like just barely kitty corner from me. And we chatted and talked and laughed. And I thought, I don't know who this person is, but I just really want to know her. And I want to have her on my podcast. And when can we go to lunch? And I'm looking at my calendar. And you lit up the room. And the table, whenever you spoke, people stopped and listened. And I was just entranced with that power that you had. Part of it is that you're so beautiful, but that's this much of it. This much of it is that you're so authentic. And then at the end of the breakfast, we're all getting up to take a picture. And Sarah pushes back and rolls out in her wheelchair. I was like, okay, don't react to this. Just act like you knew this the whole time. Inside Sarah, I was like, what the hell? What's going on? What is her story? Where did this come from? I mean, and how can she be so ultimately fabulous? You must have the most beautiful story in the world. And that's why you're known as the vertical blonde. So let's start there. Tell us a little bit about your story.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, I feel like it's always the fun reaction, especially when I'm at, a table and people are all sitting down and then people go to get up and they say, oh, wait a minute. And that's my biggest joy right there, is that I'm not seen as any different.
No.
And so that's really meaningful to me that happened. But so I was born and raised here in Utah, kept going to like warmer climates, and then I'd come back, kept going, come back. And when I was 30 years old, I was living what I felt like was just kind of the dream life. Everything had been working out really well, everything going to plan. I was running a gorgeous spa up in Park City, newly dating a new guy, making more money than I'd ever made. Just things were just like checking boxes, right? Check, check, check. And this
So you had to
boyfriend,
know something was coming, right? When
well,
you're just
and now
checking
it's
every
like,
box in the world.
exactly. People are like, things are going great. It's like, oh God, put your seatbelt on. Like, ooh,
Yeah.
something is about to happen, you know? Like things just don't keep going that way. But they can too, to a certain degree. I feel like when you really set yourself up for miracles and set yourself up for things to go well, even when they don't, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that
So,
makes
and
total sense.
I
Because
know
I
that you
think
know
that,
that.
yeah, if I hadn't have had all those struggles in the past, then I wouldn't be where I am today.
Mhm.
And let me tell you, I kind of know there are struggles coming in the future, whether it's with losing someone or whether it's my health or whether it's inflation and I end up broke. I mean, who knows? But there's
Mhm.
something else that you've developed through all of this that prepares you for whatever comes.
Totally. Totally. And it's through those struggles that you are prepared for the next, and you are prepared for the next. Or those next ones can break you down even more. It's really how you go through that. So checking every box, things going well. And me and this new boyfriend, Sean, we ended up going down to Southern Utah for a weekend getaway with another couple. And while we were down there, the first day we got up and we went on this gorgeous hike together. At this point in the story, I'm not in the wheelchair. If you get that
Right.
from walking around
Right.
making these hikes, and we went out on this gorgeous lookout. I'll never forget it. We were the only people around, gorgeous red rock formations. I felt and it looked like I was on top of the world, literally and
Yeah.
figuratively.
Yeah.
And I just turned to Sean and I said, my life is so perfect. There's nothing I'd change right now. And we just sort of basked in that moment. And those words, they ended up having this like love-hate relationship a little bit later. So 4 hours later, we ended up meeting up with this other couple. The other guy was a mechanic for not wheelchairs, four-wheelers and ATVs and motorbikes and things like that. So he brought down a trailer full of these machines for us to go out on these trails and see the leaves change and all these beautiful things. All of them had grown up on these four-wheelers, and I was not experienced. And Sean, I just remember pulling me aside and said, I'm going to keep you safe. I got a helmet for you. I'm going to put you on the biggest, safest one. I'm going to make sure we don't do anything crazy. Like, I got you. Totally got you today. Like, awesome. Let's go. Let's do this. And so we start going on these really easy, it was like a fire access road. So it was just this open dirt road, no crazy trails, just like he promised. And as we went up and around, there was kind of this point where it looked like the road went up and around this bend, like this hill, and we couldn't tell what was on the other side. So the guys said, you girls stay up on, stay behind. We're going to go check it out, make sure you are safe. That word kept getting thrown around. Going to make sure you're safe. And so a few minutes later, we see the other guy waving us up from on top of the hill saying, you're good. It's super easy. Come on up. And so I start going up in front of the other girl. And what we don't know is that Sean's coming back down the trail to get me and let me know that it's safe. So as I come around the bend, I am now going full speed towards Sean. And I feel like it's going to be a head-on collision. And my inexperienced brain just said, get off the trail. So I jerked the handlebars to the right, and I didn't see this ditch that was lining the side of the road, and my front wheels hit it. And I started flipping. And what's really crazy is that in that instant, I remember jerking the wheels to the right, but I looked back to the left and I saw Sean, and he had gotten so far out of the way that I just had to keep going straight and I would have been fine. But I didn't. And the next thing I see is like the ground and the sky, and I'm just flipping, and this machine is crushing me with every flip. And I can still hear it. I can still sense that feeling in my body of just being crushed and not being able to do anything about it. I couldn't stop this machine. And so it flips multiple times, and it finally like kind of throws me against this fallen tree stump. And I'm laying on my left side, totally dazed, totally present. I remember everything that had happened. And now I'm seeing like the dirt being kicked up from Sean's feet, just running at me full speed. And I see this terror and panic on his face. And he is just screaming. I mean, the sound that's coming out of his mouth was so like ear shattering. And I just think like from that reaction that I'm missing a leg, like my face is tore off. Like I'm just like, oh my gosh, there's no way I'm recognizable at this point. And so he gets up to me and I just calm him down. I said, don't you dare move me. Call Life Flight. And I said, how's my face? And he just kind of lets out this giggle and he says, honey, like your face is fine, helmet's on, but I don't know about the rest of your body. There was this big dent in the back of the helmet. That thing absolutely saved my brain, saved my life. And we waited about an hour and a half for Life Flight to come. And they were pinching my toes, trying to see if there was anything. And immediately it was paralysis. I couldn't feel anything from my rib cage down, couldn't move my legs. And I was also very, I just said, I don't want anyone other than paramedics to move me. Like I will stay here. I had snapped my clavicle and that's what I was laying on. And that was the pain that I was feeling the most. But as the Life Flight got there and morphine starts and, you just kind of go to la la land after that. But afterwards I would realize I broke the clavicle, broke almost every rib but one, and snapped my back at T4. It's right around kind of where the bra strap goes around the spine. And so from that break, it squeezed my spinal cord. And so the message just couldn't get from my brain to the rest of my body. And they took me to Las Vegas Hospital because it was closer. But when I woke up the next day, they'd already done surgery for 10 hours. They had already like stabilized my body. They put 2 rods, 9 pins, put a plate in my clavicle. I'm like bionic at this point. I got so much metal in the body. And I woke up the next day in the trauma unit, so dazed, so like, did that really just happen? I think in those moments, you're just beside yourself of, did that really just happen? And so one by one, they could only let 1 to 2 people in the trauma unit at a time. And so it was just kind of, they would come in and everyone kind of went into autopilot. So I woke up and I had a waiting room full. I had 4 girlfriends from 4 different states. Sean, my mom, my stepdad, my brother, grandma, grandpa, everybody was there. And they just kind of filtered in one by one. And they would all give me the same face. Like they're trying to smile, but they're terrified.
Yeah.
And no one knows what to say. And at one point, my Aunt Stacy, this was the pivotal moment for me because my Aunt Stacy came in with my grandpa and she came in for the hug. And I just cracked one word in her ear and I just said, why? And she still is kind of like, what did I just do at that moment? She pushed me away, like pushed away from me. And she got right up in my face and she said, don't you ever ask why. Searching for that answer is going to eat you alive. And that answer only comes when it is supposed to. And everyone was just kind of dazed. Even my grandpa was like, be nice. She just almost died. Like, what the heck? You're being mean to her almost. But that was the sternness that I needed. I needed that like kick in the pants of don't even go down that rabbit hole because it's this unanswerable question. Talk about like regret that you discussed in the beginning. There's no way I could go back, and everyone had their trauma around it. Sean had his trauma. Sean had the trauma of watching it, feeling so responsible. He didn't keep me safe. my mom had the trauma of getting that phone call from her daughter saying, "Mom, I can't feel my legs." And she had this anger towards Sean. She needed to project the anger somewhere. I needed to project the anger somewhere. Everyone needed to, you want to get it outside of yourself. You don't want to take the accountability for it or anything. You need something or someone to blame.
Yeah.
And then from there it's been a roller coaster. In the hospital, you're everyone's biggest priority. Tons of presents, flowers, visits. I mean, it's just like all this connection, all this love that you feel. And so some of the days in the hospital were some of my favorite days of my life.
Yeah.
And then you go home and everything's the same, and yet nothing's the same. And that's when the real pain starts to set in, because you just think, I had already figured everything out. Or I thought I did. I already had my job, my relation, everything was going so well.
And those words
then
had just come
it
out of your
didn't.
mouth on the mountaintop.
I know.
I'm living the most perfect life.
Those words
Yeah.
ended up just haunting me, because I would do something. I would literally hold out my hands in front of me and I would just stare at them for hours, and I would think, I had it. I had that like perfect life in my hand, and it's gone. And I would just stare at them and just in pure disbelief. And I went through a bout there where I didn't want to live. I constantly contemplated how to end my life.
Wow.
And yet the thing that would snap me back was I already saw everyone at my funeral. Like I already witnessed the funeral,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
And
Because
I
they were
just
all
thought,
coming, all being there.
I just thought there's no way I could do that to my people again. And so I took the anger out on my body and I disconnected, and I would hit my legs and I would scream at them. I would just be so angry at my body for not doing what it was supposed to, that the connection was gone. And the doctors actually gave me a lot more hope than they do typically for spinal cord injuries. For me, it was like, hey, it's been squeezed. It's not been severed. So there might be some connection, and it's a wait and see. And so I got really angry that like I was given hope and it wasn't coming through. And so that next year especially was just absolute pain. I ended up going back to work within 7 months. I just wanted to get back to life. And yet again, it was kind of that like hand of, looking at the hands again of like, I already figured this out, and now I got to figure it out all over again, and figure out how to get through snow again and get up to the Park City and, run my spa and be the boss when I feel like I'm such this burden and I'm not independent at all, in the ways I want to be. And it was just this constant battle inside my head and inside my heart. So that was the painful part. I mean, that's what started. That was I call it, we all have our flips in life. And that one was a literal moment where I flipped upside down and everything flipped out of place. So those next 4 years were just, I kind of played in La La Land of denial. I just pretended like it didn't happen. We just tried to keep going. Sean and I got married. We got married on the anniversary date of the accident to try and make it a good day. I mean, it was crazy. Even looking at our wedding photos, my wheelchair wasn't allowed in any photo. So we got married on the beach, and all of our videos are of Sean carrying me romantically across the beach and into the sand. And if you don't know I can't walk, you have no idea. And so we were in such denial. I ended up having a baby a couple of years after the accident. That's the one perk. I literally slept through labor. I couldn't feel it. So that was nice. But we just kept plugging along. And what was happening and festering under the surface was a lot of denial, a lot of pain, and a lot of unprocessed trauma amongst the entire circle, the entire family. And those things, if you don't truly tend to them, they will
Yeah.
come out in nasty ways.
Yeah.
So
That's probably one of my favorite books is Feelings Buried Alive, Never Die.
oh,
And that thought that we can just stuff them and we can live bigger up here and no one will notice this down here that we've stuffed. But we also, I've seen so many examples, and you, for example, me, for example, hundreds of other people, that you eventually, that you've buried down there in your gut starts ruining your life.
it does.
Yeah.
And it was ruining mostly our relationship.
Huh.
I had a lot of just bitterness and anger towards Sean. I would try not to show it, but if anything would go wrong, like I would fall out of my wheelchair, or my bladder has like a mind of its own because it's paralyzed too, and like if something would go wrong in my head, it was always like, if Sean hadn't put me in this chair, it's Sean's fault that I'm having this problem. And so I had
Wow.
that was the one that was buried alive, and that thing did not die. It just grew, and it grew legs, and it grew fangs, and I just started getting
Ugh.
more and more disconnected, and which caused him to disconnect. And we had a lot of we would go at each other. We were not on the same team. We were very much against each other as much as we wanted to be with each other. And so it was hard. We had so many layers to it. We'd only been dating for 6 months when we got hurt. So we also got thrown into this like relationship and caregiver situation and all these different layers that just started to kind of fester. And so, as beautiful fate would have it, Sean's job got him a job transfer opportunity to go to Maui after about 4 years of being hurt. And so we took our little family to Maui, and I found myself without a job, with a lot of time on my hands. And I just felt in my heart that Maui held healing. I didn't know what it looked like, but I just felt in my heart that it was going to offer me some healing. And I really opened my heart up to healers. And I just kept saying, like, please bring me healers. Please introduce me to healers, please. And I just started meeting people that helped me with nutrition and helped me to connect to my body, helped me to connect to my soul and my inner knowing. I met that gorgeous therapist I talked about. I called her my medicine woman. She was very non-traditional therapy, and she talked about parts work and the different parts of me that needed healing and the parts of me that were strong and all the different parts within us. And so I just met all these different healers. And the first session there with Kathy, my therapist, I remember taking me through this like sort of internal meditation. And she said, what part of you is hurting the most right now? And I thought it was going to be like, the part with me and Sean, or the part around the accident. But the part that was hurting was that I felt disconnected from my femininity. I felt disconnected from the flow in my body. And even just, I'm not like, I can't flow in my hips the way I used to, and things like that. I just felt very disconnected. And so that was step number one for me, of how do I get connected back to that? And I started dancing. I started swimming. I started just getting around other women that were truly embodying that feeling of femininity. That I just poured my life into it. And that is what started to kind of unearth those trapped feelings and allowed for healing to take place. So I think that when we're open and we're truly inviting it, the healers appear like in very unexpected places. And that's what happened. That's what happened with me. So
I think that so many people get to that point and they know that they want to heal, but they don't realize that starts here.
Yeah.
With you, that they're waiting for the outside world to come and rescue them. Totally. And that they're just going to show up. But you took time to focus on and drew into your life those things that really were purposeful and that you knew were the places to start.
Yeah.
And it was a shift from what I call living in victimville to taking that train and getting out of town, girl.
Totally. It's like, give me a one-way ticket out of here.
Yeah.
Yes, it's so true. When you are stuck in that blame and you're stuck in that nastiness, it breeds more nastiness.
Yeah.
And it was that shift. And, now what I teach is how to own your story so your story doesn't own you. Because for the longest time, that story of what had happened and why it was happening and all the things that it was supposed to mean, that's what was ruling, excuse me, me and my life. And then when I said, I get to decide. And so I think that my Aunt Stacy had it partly right, where you don't ask why, but I realized that I got to decide why. And that was truly empowering, that nothing has meaning until we give it meaning at all. And we truly get to decide it. And until we understand that and truly take hold of it, it's all that old stories or the old limiting beliefs or the old, conscious programming, all those things that are the ones in control. But I got to decide. And I thought, what if this was truly a cracking open experience? What if this could offer me everything I've ever wanted? If I just chose to see it that way. And I started playing, I call it the what if game. What if it means, and I just would play around with, what if this could mean this? What if, and I just started playing instead of being so rigid in this is what it means and this is what it meant for my destiny and all those things. So
yeah, you could have just been one of those blondes in the room.
Yeah.
Instead, you get to be the blonde in the room.
Well, it's been such a fun journey. And so the whole process of becoming vertical, that started very much kind of on accident as far as what then whisked me away on that train out of Victimville is I'm there in Maui and all of these things are happening and I'm feeling all these healers and all this stuff's going on. And all my friends and family want to know back home, how are things going? What's next? Because my story, everyone started to kind of hold on to it. What is she going to do next? And is she going to survive? And what is she going to do with it? And so people they just held on. It was almost like this story they were watching or this movie that was, unveiling in real life and in real time. And so I needed to start a blog. I felt like I wanted to start writing stories about what had happened. And the only thing I knew at that point was that my words had power. And because the words had taken me down in a nastyville for a while. So I thought, okay, if I just change my words and change what I call myself, that's going to help change directions. And I started playing with all these different ways of, walking Sarah, flying Sarah, standing up, and all these different things. And I landed on this word vertical, and it felt sexy. It felt empowered. It felt feminine and fierce and all these things that I was trying to embody. And then the blonde was pretty obvious. And I was like, vertical blonde, that's it. This is it. This feels so cool. And I started this little blog, but then I started to kind of play with this new name. And I thought, I am vertical blonde. And I started calling myself vertical blonde. And I thought, I'm going to use her as my ultimate potential. Who is Sarah at her ultimate potential? She's vertical blonde. And how is she? And what is her mannerisms? And how does she dress? And how does she speak to people? And how does she make people feel? And I literally started crafting this, what I call my iconic identity. I started creating it. And then as I started calling myself vertical blonde, I started becoming it. And it was the life force to my healing, to my growth, to the woman that you see today. Because I tell you what, Mary, if you had met me, especially right as I came from the hospital, it's a night and day. I look back and I just have so much love for her. And also just like, hang on, girl, like I got you, like hold
Yeah.
tight because it only gets better. And so I I started understanding that this iconic identity, like it had a lot of power. And as I started diving into
Ugh.
like, oh my God, it was pure power. And as I started diving into like personal development and Tony Robbins, that's what he teaches. That's what Tony Robbins teaches. You go to any of his events, it's what is this, this alter ego, or what is this higher self? And what do you call it? What does it look like? And I thought, I did all of that on accident. And I had no idea the treasure that I was creating. And so then it was like game on. And I started just diving into like really understanding the psyche and understanding trauma and understanding growth. And I'm now even a Tony Robbins breakthrough strategist. Like I got certified and understanding it. And so I use all of that iconic identity training to help other people when they are in the midst of their flip, when they are in the ditch, so to speak, of it's not going to be the old you that's going to get you out. It's going to be a version of yourself that you have not met yet and that you can create.
I think you are the best example that I have ever seen of the thing that you and I and a million other people talk about and teach, and that is the moment you stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start living. What does this get for me? What do I get from this? What do I get to do this? What's next for me?
Yeah.
This is a get to. So if it's a get to, what is it? What do I get to do? And that's just the process you went through. What if I get to do this? And I said, I'm not a victim anymore. I could get to be like the most fabulous, vertically blonde person on the planet. I could talk to thousands of people on the stage and hold their attention. I could do this, I could do that. So many doors, Sarah, opened up to you because of what seemed to so many people as the worst possible thing that could have happened to you.
Oh, yeah. I remember playing a game with an old boyfriend. And I don't know why I remember this so clearly, but we had played one of those games. You're getting to know people and it's like a would you rather kind of game, right? And I remember it coming up of like, what would you do if you got paralyzed? And my view of disability was so negative. I remember saying, I would just kill myself. How do you even live like that? And as I say those words, even I'm like, oh my God, that's horrible to think, but that was my view. And that's why it was so hard after I got hurt. And I remember even my stepdad, the first day he saw me in my wheelchair, he just broke down because he said, I thought you were going to be, like, for lack of a better word, a vegetable. He's like, I thought they're like, and he's like, now you're the most successful out of the family. He's like, how did you do that? So
how did you create that?
But you go from that, we all just have those beliefs about what we think about the situation. And that's going to stop you the most, right? I had this belief around what I thought disability meant and looked like, and it was so not pretty. And I'm ashamed of that now, but look, I was naive. I'd never seen anybody living a full, vibrant, fabulous life with a wheelchair. I hadn't seen it. And so I thought, well, what if I was that visual for other people? And I started to notice, like, anywhere I went, the wheelchair got me attention. Like, all eyes were on me. And I used to hate it. I'd be like, stop looking at me. Like,
they were on you at that table long before we saw the wheelchair, honey. So just, you can play that game if you want, but whatever.
Well, but I'm saying that's when things started to flip, when I started to say, what if I got to use this attention for good? Like for a source of good. What if I used it and like debunked everything they thought about disability? So that's when I started to say, what if I just showed up really differently? What if I just showed up in like fully me? And I think the difference is and it's not a mask. it's not a costume. It's not a,
Mhm.
you're not playing a character, but like, what if I showed up that way no matter where I was? What if I showed up that way when I'm alone in my home? What if I
Yeah.
practiced showing up with full vibrancy, with joy, with appreciation, with gratitude for how things are unfolding, with empowerment of choosing why it happened, all of it. What if I did that no matter if anyone else was around? And that was the big shift, was
I
I
love
truly
that.
started to embody it differently. And that's why, because people will say, they're like, you're really authentic, you're really genuine. And people can pick up on that, right? You pick up on someone when you meet them and you're like, I don't think that's who you really are. I think you look good right now, but I don't think this is who you are. And that's that inauthenticity that people can pick up on. And so for me, it was like, I got to show up as vertical blonde for my own survival. And I'm going to tap into that no matter what. When I'm parenting my son, when I'm, talking to Sean, who we're now ex-husband and wife, but we're really good friends. What if I showed up that way as the ex-wife with joy and love and appreciation? Like, that's when you know you're really changing. You're really becoming a new level of yourself.
And I'm surprised today that you have black on. I wore black so that I wouldn't be competing color wise, because almost every time I see you, you're in this bright fuchsia pink, which is my signature color.
You're so right. It's actually, do you know what I think it is? I'm in mourning of the sun. It has been snowing nonstop, and I feel like I'm a bit in mourning of spring, maybe. I don't know what it is, but it is really rare. I'm usually like brighter than my neon sign behind me. So
Yeah,
I
you
feel like I
are.
need to
You
change
wear
my
this
shirt.
beautiful. I don't know how many pink outfits do you have? How many pink outfits is
It's a
it possible
lot.
for one person to have? A lot. Yes.
It's a lot.
I have 3, and I think that's a lot. No, I have 4. But you, I mean, just like in every different style,
Oh, there's a whole
whatever.
section of the closet that's all pink.
Yeah,
So
pink.
I love the pinks.
The thing that I would like for you to share with my listeners is, and this will kind of maybe wind us to the end of this, Sarah. You talked about being authentic, and it is an inner sense that we all have if we listen to it. And we can use our intuition to determine if someone is truly being authentic or acting. And it literally is acting. I think of all the actors in Hollywood and Broadway and all those places, they don't have a hold a candle to the most of the population in the US who every single day are acting and putting on a fake facade of who they are. And like you, I believe we have to certainly, fake it until you make it kind of thought. That's how I started my catering business. I didn't know anything. I just faked it for the first 15 years and finally went, hey, I think I know how to do this. So there is a little bit of that involved, but eventually you have to come face to face with who you authentically are. And that is the pull to you always. It's like this rope. I just feel when I'm with you, it's drawing me in, and I see it happening with other people around me. They're just like drawn in to your authenticity, to your just opening your heart to who you are and whatever question you have, and how can I lift your life today? And you sense this authenticity inside of you. How does one come to that? How do you begin to be truly authentic?
For me, okay, in Hawaiian, there's something called your na'au. It's N-A-apostrophe-A-U is how it's spelled. In Hawaiian, your na'au is your deepest inner knowing. They call it your seat of thought. And your seat of thought is not up here, not in your heart. It is in your gut. And your gut, and they have a space in your body of your na'au. It's right below the rib cage. And also that parts work I talked about with my therapist, there's the parts of us, and then there is the self. The self is your now. It is that deepest inner knowing. It is who you are in your essence, in your truest essence of who you are. And the thing that I got really good at in that working with Kathy, I went literally every year for 4 years, every day on or every week on Fridays. And we would begin with a closing of the eyes, going into that now, into my seat of thought, and simply asking what part needed me the most. What part was hurting? What part was ready to like light up the world? What part of me was needing myself to show up? Because when that parts work, they call it internal family system. And it's truly the internal parts of ourselves. So there's kind of like your manager part, the part that's stuck in the past, the part that's a little anxious, all these different parts that come up. But that self is at our core. And what we can do is when we tend to the parts and reassure those parts, look, I got you. I got you. I'm the one to keep you safe now. I'm the one that it's okay. You can relax. I got this. Having those internal conversations is what's going to quiet the parts that aren't necessarily out for your best interest, but to kind of keep you safe right where you're at, right? Not grow.
Yeah.
And so
Protect
this
you.
parts work.
There are so many parts that are just there to protect us.
Always.
And
always.
we have to come to a point where we don't need protecting. We can step out.
Yes. Yep, absolutely. And you mentioned acting, and it's so, I love synchronicities. So beautiful. I love our conversation because I just spoke about this at my event over this past weekend, that you can sense true acting. So we all sense bad acting. We all can pick that out. We're like, oh, girl, and those are the ones that are just trying to put on the character. They're just trying to be or put on a costume almost. But the ones that you know are true actors, and you're like, I'm so mesmerized by the scene they're creating. They are tapping into the part of them that already knows how that character feels. And so that iconic identity, it is not me putting on a mask. It is tapping into the parts of me, tapping into the times in my life that I know what it feels like to be empowered, to be confident, to be ready, to be open, whatever it is that I'm trying to do in that moment. I'm tapping into the part of me that already knows. And there's parts of all of us that already know what it feels like to overcome, to do the thing. Even if it's little, we know what that felt like. We're like, I did that. I did that today. I showed up, or I wore the pink and I usually wear black, or whatever it is, right? And then that's where confidence is built. I always say confidence is an action word. You only get the confidence by doing the action. Yeah. And so it's all tied together. It's me going into my now of who I am at my essence. And girl, I got to tell you that from the day I was born, I knew that I had a love for the stage and setting an experience for people. I was drawn to acting. I had moved out to LA. I hosted a television show for many. I was in it, but it always lacked depth. And I wanted to use that passion of a stage and a camera and a microphone to actually make a difference. And this is where my accident was my catalyst. My accident was the alchemy of putting my passion and depth together to actually make a difference. And there's something I learned many years ago, and I don't even know where it truly stemmed from, but I call it the spark. That when I am connecting with someone, that I square off my shoulders to them and I'm connected. I'm connected into their eyes, into their heart. I truly want to hear them and I want to make them feel seen, because I struggle with that. I want to feel seen, right? For who I am, myself, my core self. Yeah. And so when I tap in there's a moment where I will literally see a spark in their eye, and there's something in them shifts. Either it's their shoulders shift back to me, or their eyes lighten up, or they lean in a little bit more. There's something, and everything else is turned off and they are turned on. And I, call it a gift if you want, but I've seen it happen too much to know that this is a really priceless gift I can give to people in that moment. And that when I am tuned in, their spark ignites. And that, I believe, is why people are drawn in, because I am wanting to see them for them and allow their parts that are maybe trying to keep them safe calm down a little bit. Like, we're here. I got you. And I just try to do that with anyone I'm with, because I know how much it feels when someone does that to me.
You just nailed it on the head. That is exactly your gift. Sarah, you've had so many gifts in your life. You had the gift of being on the top of the world. You had the gift of being beautiful and wondering if your face was gone. You had the gift of your accident.
Mm-hmm.
You had the gift of that wheelchair. You had the gift of awakening. You had the gift of discovering. And when I first met you, I remember we pulled out from the table, we walked over by that door to take that photo. And I was so drawn to your authenticity. I knelt down and I leaned in just because that's where I felt I was drawn. And I felt like there was no one else in the room for about 2 seconds. We just connected. You saw my spark. And that meant something to me. I saw your spark. And that meant something to you. When two people can see each other completely naked and still see the beauty.
Totally.
That's your gift.
Oh.
Sarah, you do so much for this world. You speak, you do all these things. You actually do coaching, right? One-on-one coaching?
I do. I actually prefer
Yeah.
group. I think that a lot more magic happens in groups.
In the group.
And so
I agree with you. I'm that way. Yeah.
I think so. I think that when we hear someone else and when we see someone else showing up in their fullest, it gives us permission to do the same. And I just feel like it's a lot more transformational, for lack of a better word. So I started the Icon Collective, and our whole premise is about owning our story, so that story doesn't own you, and showing up as our iconic identity and truly rooting each other on, helping each other to lean in on that. And so we meet every single Wednesday, and that's been going strong. And then I also am now starting to help people who want to, kind of, once you heal that story and use that story, it's like, how do you share it? How do you share it and actually create impact? And so I just launched the Iconic Impact Academy as well. So for those that are wanting to do more speaking.
All right, kids, if you want more connection with this gorgeous vertical blonde and you want to take your story and be empowered by it, not what's happening to you, but what you get to do. We're going to have all the links below at the end of this podcast. You can connect with Sarah on social media, on her website. You can reach out. She's one of the most approachable people I've ever met. And my gift to you this week is Sarah. Embrace her, love her, as I do. Namaste.
Listen to the full podcast today and subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and more. Crafting a Meaningful Life with Mary Crafts.